Welcome friends to another r/malicious compliance video. If you're not a malicious person, prove it by hitting the like and subscribe buttons down below. And our first story of the day is by strong abbreviations 5. Neighbor complained to the HOA about my yard. So I have a Karen for a neighbor. She's a grumpy old C with a live-in son in his 40s and no other family or friends. And when I say she's a Karen, we're talking to the point that she came into my property to yell at our landscaper about a boulder he was installing on our property. Something about believing it would fall over onto more of our property. A few months after we moved in, we received a letter from the HOA saying they'd received complaints and asking that we make sure we're mowing, watering, and maintaining. I chalked it up to moving into a nicer neighborhood and made an effort to mow twice a week instead of my normal once. Added a little time to the sprinklers and figured it was all good. Apparently it was not all good, as we received another letter stating the complaints had continued and the HOA wanted to talk with us to see what the problem was. I should note, we had just moved in not that long ago and hadn't landscaped the back yet, so we were letting our dogs pee on the front at night, which led to the inevitable patches of bright green grass that grow stupid fast. Now, I'll freely admit I don't keep my yard to the level of some of my neighbors, but it was in perfectly good shape, outside some green spots and an otherwise average-looking yard, and I do my best to keep things mowed and looking decent. Turns out our grumpy C had taken real offense to this and started complaining to the HOA. The hearing ended up being mostly incoherent rambling, but the bottom line was she didn't like how our lawn looked with the green spots. While the HOA agreed that this was not her business and definitely not theirs, I decided she was right, and we should stop letting our dogs out in the front to pee, as I also don't like the green spots. Now I put them on a leash and let them do their business in her yard, her tree lawn, and I'm clearly not the only one, as her entire yard is now covered in pee spots and dead spots on her actual lawn, which my dogs don't step on. I'm pretty sure she's complained about everyone with a dog, and now the entire neighborhood takes their dogs to her yard. The best part, she actually does a crap job taking care of her lawn. Weeds and crabgrass everywhere, she just waters it almost non-stop. So today, I got to report her to the HOA for her yard looking like total poop. If it were any other house, there are much worse, I wouldn't care at all. But this lady wanted lawns without spots, so I'm just doing my part to enforce her rules. We started this story off hearing about an HOA and I was like, oh boy, here we go, another HOA story. But it actually ended up not being the HOA's fault at all, and the HOA seemed actually pretty reasonable. If you had a neighbor complaining about all the green spots in your yard and this and that, would you start making sure that green spots started popping up in their yard? Let me know in the comments down below. Our next story is by Hoovian Spawn. Take 2 paid days off to think about why you want to continue working here. Many years ago, I got a job working in a retail store. This store and 2 others were owned by a young couple and another young woman. I worked there happily for about a year and became very good at my job, which included reminding the owners when stock needed replacing, merchandising, etc. At one point, we lost a few staff in rapid succession, leaving myself and my friend as the only long-term staff. Then my friend was offered a managerial position with one of our competitors, so she left as well. This left me to train all the new staff, run the floor, deal with vendors, place orders, do pricing, basically manage the store. So I approached the owners about being named the new manager, since I was already doing the job, just without the pay or title for several months. They said that sounds great, but we'd like you to do a management course before we make it official. But before you do that, can you just wait a couple more months until all the new staff have been trained? I naively agreed to do this, thinking long-term it would be to my benefit. Now, during the waiting time, one of the new staff got very chummy with the owners. She had never worked retail before, wasn't particularly good at the job, but was super friendly to them. Next thing I know, they've appointed her the new manager. Needless to say, I didn't take this news particularly well, especially considering she was still constantly asking me how to do things. Let's just say my attitude towards work changed drastically. I no longer gave a crap. Stock was getting low? Not my job. Next week's roster hasn't been done? Not my job. I still performed all the tasks I was paid to do, and all my customers loved me, but I stopped doing any extra work. So then I get dragged into the owner's office for a meeting. We've noticed that your attitude has changed. You aren't going above and beyond, blah blah. So we would like to give you the next 2 days off to think about why you want to continue work here, and we would like it in writing." Before I had even walked out, I knew I was going to be resigning. I went home, talked to my husband, and he agreed I should just quit. So I took my 2 paid days off to spend time with my family and get a new job. When I went back into work, I was greeted with smiles and they eagerly took the piece of paper I handed them. The look on their faces dropped to shock when they realized what they were reading was my resignation and not an account of how much I loved working there and all the reasons I wanted to stay. I worked my 2 weeks notice and happily left to greener pastures at my new job. Less than a year later, their store closed down, so I guess their choice of manager didn't go so well. This is why you've gotta be wary when working with friends. The saying usually says don't work with friends or family, but I don't necessarily agree with that far of a notion. I just think that when you start overlooking flaws and allowing less or much less than adequate performance to get by because they're your friend, they'll pick it up, or you're their family, you'll be able to teach them and get them up to speed, no problem. It can become a sinking ship really quickly. Not only to the overall establishment, but to the morale of everybody else around. Our next story is by Direct Shepherder 61, 2 weeks notice in writing. My very first job was working fast food at Wendy's. I was 16 and most of my coworkers were also teenagers. There was always work to be done. If you have time to lean, you have time to clean. But working afternoons and evenings with a bunch of teens, there was also plenty of freaking around. Work wasn't the greatest, but it really wasn't that bad either. It was tolerable. Then we got a new manager. This guy was in his 40s and he was a lifer. He was super strict and was not about having fun at work at all. Unfortunately, I quickly became his favorite work vessel because I was easier to control than some of my coworkers. He leaned heavily on me to pick up the slack that the others left. It got real old real fast. Why should I work more than everybody else for the same pay? Why should I be stuck doing more tasks than my coworkers who continue to goof off? I've voiced my concerns to the manager, but nothing changed. He was usually busy hiding in the office with the mirrored glass window, just watching everybody. He'd only surface on occasion to tell me to work harder and give everybody else a free pass. Eventually, I had enough. One day, I marched into his office and demanded that I either get a raise or for him to hold everybody else to the same standards. He didn't go for that. I told him to consider that conversation my 2 weeks notice then. He said he needed that in writing. I ripped a sheet of paper out of a notebook on his desk and wrote something along the lines of, "This is my 2 weeks notice, signed name." I walked outside of his office, spit on the paper, and stuck it to his mirrored glass window. He could look at it all he wanted that way. I felt amazing. For the next 2 weeks, the manager kept letting me know that it wasn't too late to change my mind about quitting. He kept alluding to a raise, but never actually offered it. "If you come back, you might just get a raise. Either you give me the raise, or I'm giving you nothing." How dumb can they be for this person to say that I want a raise or I'm quitting, they go and they quit, and then they think that they can somehow lure them back in by saying, "Come on, we might just give you a raise if you come back." Like, do you think OP is actually stupid? Our next story is by Could Be Any Person Too. You want every request to go through you? Okay. I work in a law firm, and my job is to prepare legal documents for our clients. We have one client who recently hired an expat to work as its new general manager, whom shall we call Mr. Know-It-All. We never had problems with the logistics with this client before he came along. His first order of business was to email us the following: "Dear law firm, as the new general manager of client, I want all the legal documents being requested by our employees to go through me first. I know it's not the standard procedure in our company to copy furnish me when they email you, but do BCC me for every request they send you. All legal documents will now only be made or reviewed upon my approval." We initially complied with his instructions, but it takes days before he gave his approval. Now, I've been working with this client for over 5 years, and I know what documents are time sensitive. So, I drafted urgent documents and BCC'd him with a note that says, "Kindly secure Mr. Know-It-All's approval prior to the execution of this document." After doing this with some of the requests, I received an email from Mr. Know-It-All which states, Hey OP, didn't I tell you that all requests should go through me? No matter how small or urgent it is, I want you to ask for my approval. No matter how small or urgent it is, I want you to ask for my approval, no exceptions. Please do use the final document I sent you. I don't care about the legal parlance of your country, I want it worded my way. Also, I want all the emails sent by our employees to you printed and handed to me, including those made prior to my employment in the company. Now on to the malicious compliance. What Mr. Know-It-All doesn't know is that contracts must be worded in conjunction with our laws. Authorization must contain words that use specific words required by the government agency you're dealing with, and so on. We also bill our clients per page regardless of what it is. We consider it billable. I followed his instructions to the letter. You want every request, even if it's urgent, to go through you? Sure. You want contracts worded your way? Sure. You want authorization worded your way also? Sure. You want all the emails printed? Sure. The results: contracts that are up for renegotiation and renewal were late or get rejected by the other party due to Mr. Know-It-All's wording, and it cost the client some money. Some government agencies didn't honor some of the letters of authorization, which also cost the client some money. Printed emails also cost the client money. But one particular email I received a few minutes before I go home was worth the malicious compliance. Dear OP, we would like to request for the attached documents to be made. This will be used for Mr. Know-It-All's working visa. We weren't able to apply for his visa due to the lockdown. We only have until tomorrow to submit the documents. Knowing Mr. Know-It-All wouldn't reply to emails I send him at least a day after, I requested for his approval the next day. They ended up submitting the documents late, and Mr. Know-It-All got fined for it, but not enough for deportation. The client racked up a hefty bill for 1 month, but Mr. Know-It-All toned down after that. Nobody really likes a control freak that says, "No, don't do anything yourself. It all has to go through me. I can't trust anybody to do anything right." If you find yourself in that kind of a situation, you're either hiring the wrong people, not training people enough, or just really insecure about people's abilities to do things right. And our final story of the day is by Stumpy6464, Thousands of Dollars Turned to Rocks. Today, we had trucks drop off some concrete and non-treated lumber for the building materials department. I work in this department. Both of these categories of product cannot get wet. If they do, they can't be sold or must be sold at a reduced price. The bundles of woods and pallets of concrete are unloaded shortly before I get to work and clock in the afternoon to work a closing shift. So I arrive and all this product is outside. This is normal. I check the weather and have about 3 hours until rain is forecast. Okay, it'll be close, but I can get it done in the time frame. So I begin. I bring inside a few pallets while also helping customers. We're mildly understaffed today. Well, Mr. Manager says the pallets can't be inside because they block the aisles. This is the issue. We don't have enough employees in my department to work product and help customers. He's correct about policy saying not to block the aisles, but we do this all the time so we can work together on product and help customers. Doing both is part of the job. I wanted a clear answer. My associates and I all want a clear answer. So 30 minutes into me working, it begins to absolutely downpour with crazy lightning. About 2 hours before it was forecast in the weather. So instead of all the product being inside, it was outside so it would not block the aisles. I normally wouldn't let this happen and just bring it inside and take getting chewed out, but today I figured if I was going to get chewed out, I was going to get chewed out for following the rules. So product's outside and it's raining sideways. Manager now isn't happy. The forklift is also outside and covered in rain only because he doesn't like it being inside. And half of the lumber and concrete is already toast. He then asked why it was all outside in the rain, and I reminded him about what he told me and also reminded him about the operating procedures that he was angry with me about for not following the previous times I've blocked aisles with product to keep it out of the rain. At this point, 50% of the concrete bags are saturated through and begin to harden into just big rocks. And all the MDF and particle board is blistering and falling apart, so he gets to explain why the store had a couple thousand in markdowns today to his boss. And his boss likes me, so I doubt any of this will even come back to bite me. Feels good. Hey, later today I know it's going to be pouring water from the sky, and that would ruin the product, but you can't have it in here. Keep it outside. Come back a little bit later. Oh my god, all this stuff just got wet. What happened? I would just be standing there with my arms in the air like, are you serious? Do you not remember what he told me a while ago today? I wonder if any of that's coming out of the paycheck. But with that being said, that's all the time we have for today. So of all these stories I've read today, which is your favorite and why? Let me know in the comments down below. And if you haven't yet, if you could like and subscribe, that would mean a lot to me. Whatever you do, whether it's liking, subscribing, turning notifications on, all of it helps grow this channel, and I appreciate the heck out of it. So until next time, I'll see you all tomorrow with some more stories.